about the curriculum and what's available? Have you changed that?
We haven't yet. I mean, but we are looking at that. So yeah, we're moving to a system where I think, why shouldn't everybody learn a language all the way through, and why shouldn't everybody do history and geography properly? And so we're introducing things which are we're getting rid of all the banding. At the moment, the school has got lots of banding, nurture groups, a lower ability band, and until this year, there was intensive banding. So there was almost like a grammar school stream in the top end, but it was that was needed at a time in order to give confidence to certain families that this was a school where they could thrive in. And I guess that was something at Holland Park, everything was mixed ability. There was no setting, none, and it was incredibly difficult. It was that was just forbidden. Setting was wrong, but here it's almost the opposite. But actually, it's no longer appropriate because the intake has changed a bit, and we don't need to have.
So do you mean it's like what we used to call streaming? When I went to Holland Park, we were in 12 rigid streams that you didn't change out of. No,
so When I was at Holland Park, there was none of that. It had all just been, everything was mixed ability. So here there was more setting rather than streams, but still, top to bottom, all the way down. Even to the extent where tutor groups were in their ability groups, which I found quite surprising. Yeah, it was almost like, I don't know why that was done, but that's not like, we've totally removed that already. But we don't need to have 8 sets. We can have a couple of top sets and then another group, and it's still more it's softer edge.
So you do still have a degree of setting, or you don't do mixed ability teaching throughout?
No, and we have we've got more mixed ability teaching now than we've had before, and we've made sure that. Now, that was partly in discussion since my appointment with the people here last year to sort of plan for this year to sort of make that happen, which is great. So it's already happening. But so within that, you still need to pitch everybody higher. So one of the issues is about making sure everybody. So one of the things I've done is make homework a big issue. So setting tons of homework. I think that's really important because it.
You do think homework's important?
I think it's essential because it's getting kids who, I think it's an equal opportunities issue. If you come from a home where you're surrounded by learners and learning, maybe homework's not so critical, even though you need it to revise for tests and do well in exams and so on. But if you're coming from a family where you associate school as where you do the learning and it doesn't happen, taking learning home and training students to be learners, where studying happens, they study, they prepare for learning. It's something which they're driving, that they own. It's not something that they're forced to do by the teacher. It's something which is for them to pursue. I think homework is the way that you do that. It has to be constructed in the right way so they're able to practice and to learn and to deepen their memory.
What would you do with students who maybe just didn't have the home environment to do that? Do you have
that's the whole discussion we're having here about the extent of our provision after school. Because then we should call it sort of, people come up with these different phrases. It's sort of the learning you do between the lessons. I mean, where it happens, homework always suggests you have to do it at home. It doesn't really mean that literally. But yeah, so I think... So
learning plus or something.
Yeah. It's sort of that sort of studying, sort of seeing homework as study time when you go off and you do things which prepare you for the next stage of the learning. I think that's really important. So I got that from Kegs. We thought homework was an important driver of the culture there, where we used to talk about the kids aren't spoon-fed. They were incredibly self-reliant, and they would know how to sort of construct an A-level. When you got to the sixth form, by the time you got there, they would know, you need a scheme of work, you need the syllabus, you need this. They would be very savvy about all of that. They would drive it. They'd ask you. They would say, "When are we doing section 2.1 on the syllabus? I don't think we've covered that yet, sir." It was amazing, and to empower kids to the level where they are pushing you as a teacher, I think it's exciting. Now that wouldn't happen here too much. It would be.
It's giving the children the big picture, the overall plan of where things are going.
Yeah, and then the tools to access it. So. And it does happen elsewhere. I mean, my daughter, she goes to a comprehensive school where, she's one of the people. She's an effective learner. She can do that. So it's not like it's only in grammar schools, not remotely. But it's just the depth of it. I found amazing. I still say this now, I saw types of learning there, lessons, which I've never seen anywhere else, which were done because the teachers could trust the students to do things. So, you know, lessons where the whole thing was built on enormous preparation for a lesson that the students would do prior to it, or where the level of open-endedness and coupled with depth was profound. So often group work that you see in some settings is quite shallow. It doesn't have depth because the children are just recycling their kind of low-level language and their half-baked ideas.
Yeah.
And you think, God, why don't you just tell them? Because they're
but
not getting anywhere. But at Kegs, you could find that actually that could sort of spiral upwards because they had genuine knowledge and expertise, which could actually be fueled. And that was interesting to see that type of thing happening.
But that makes me think of two things. One, I remember, I won't say his name, but one of Michael Gove's advisors saying about his own schooling, which had been private, that the single thing he thought private education brought was your peers.
Yeah.
He said he saw much better teaching in state schools, but that being with very, very high ability, high achieving peers had a huge difference. I just throw that in. And the other thing that you're reminding me of is something I think you wrote in relation to Daisy Christodoulo's book, The Seven Myths.
Yeah.
And we've had quite a lot of discussion about it, haven't we? And you and Kevin Stannard and other people wrote very interesting responses. And one of your responses that I found fascinating was a description of, and it wasn't just a lesson, but an entire period of co-creation and learning that you had done, presumably at Kegs, which with exactly as you're saying now, and that it really made the knowledge skills debate dissolve. It was absurd.
Yeah.
You wrote it, so you must remember that.
Yeah, in fact, you know, I think that debate is, you know, it goes down a blind alley because it pitches, you know, people against each other. I mean, there's a book like this book here, Martin Robinson's Trivium, is a fantastic way of synthesising the best of traditional teaching, and we find it really helpful here. We're talking about it a lot at the school, the Trivium. We think it's really powerful because one of the things I'd say the weakest teaching in any context is when people are trying to do things which are too much based on discussion and debate, where the knowledge isn't secure. And so the Trivium model is brilliant because you can say that grammar, the knowledge is really key, it's the bedrock, and that requires a certain level of delivery, which is teaching in a more traditional style, and recall and memory and all that stuff are really valid. And then, but that's not the goal. The goal is that you go to the next stage, which is this dialectic, this idea of debate, discuss, pull it apart, but that needs to be informed. And then the final part is the rhetoric of then giving the kids the confidence to express all that in different forms and really, you know, skillful and deliberate in the way that they construct essays, speeches, forms of expression, all sorts of things. And we find that in our groups discussions we've had about teaching and learning for Highbury Grove, we think this is really exciting because it's the best of sort of traditional teaching and knowledge combined with, you know, a modern perspective on what a comprehensive school could be, and I think that's exciting. Whereas the co-construction thing I did was almost just taking advantage of the fact that it's like having a sort of a fast car and seeing how fast you can drive it. It's like, wow, I can actually get to the point with this class where they can plan their own lessons. They can take, you know, even there are lessons where, you know, I had to be away and they would take their own class with the cover teachers sort of sitting just in the background. And it's fantastic, but even there it took quite a lot of planning to get to that point. But it was amazing. So children are capable of amazing things if you give them that space